I'm Elena Kanagy-Loux, lace historian and maker, and founder of the Brooklyn Lace Guild, an organization dedicated to the preservation of making lace by hand. Please pardon me if I'm looking off screen a little bit while I'm recording this, as there's so much information that I wanted to include in this video that I have to read off of my notes. As a historian of lace, I've spent nearly a decade searching for and collecting stories of the makers of these exquisite and diaphanous textiles. Lace makers are really like engineers and hold an incredible amount of knowledge and skill in their hands and minds, enabling them to produce ethereal textiles that were once treasured by kings and queens. A single pair of 17th century lace cuffs owned by Louis XVI was recorded as taking 2 years to complete, and a single lace accessory could cost the equivalent of a year's wages for a farm laborer. Today, however, most of our records on the history of lace focus around the wealthy wearers and merchants of lace, as lace makers did not become wealthy from their labor, and the names and stories of the lace makers who created some of the finest objects in museum collections have been lost to time. I'm calling this month's assignment Invisible Hands. It is a tribute to the history of feminine makers who have not been documented or recognized within the canon of art history. My own practice focuses around the idea of ghost labor, or the invisible hands behind textiles and clothing that we treasure. For this assignment, I would like you to create a tribute in honor of the feminine maker in the past and up through the present day. To clarify, by feminine, I do not necessarily mean female, but rather a maker of a craft that has been undervalued due to feminine associations in society. Your tribute can be devoted to a known maker as well, someone such as your grandmother or another instructor that has taught you important things in your life. There are no specific guidelines for the techniques or materials that you should use for your project, but I will give you some suggestions to shape your creation. Your tribute could take the form of many different types of textiles and creations. One example of a textile that has historically been used by women and girls to document their stories is the embroidered sampler. Samplers were part of a girl's education, not only in learning needlework skills for her future role as a housewife or domestic worker, but also to learn literacy through the inclusion of the alphabet and often Bible verses. Samples from the US and UK are some of the only documents that we have of girls' names, birth dates, and achievements, in a time when they were essentially passed from father to husband and were rarely able to achieve independence. Some girls also created map samplers of the US or of the world, which taught them geography during a period when women's education was not deemed important. Another example of a textile tribute could be an altarpiece. We have long venerated wealth, royalty, and celebrity in our society, and this could be a way to honor a humbler figure, one who has often historically lived in poverty while others profited off of their labor. The way our society assigns value for individuals is, in my opinion, often inverted, with those who are willing to exploit others for a profit receiving the most praise, while maternal and feminine skills like teaching, childcare, and garment production rest at the bottom of the barrel. Perhaps you can flip this on its head in your own spiritual practice and build an altarpiece in honor of textile and garment workers, both in history and today. Patchwork and quilting are another method that have been used around the world for centuries to repurpose treasured textiles in a new unified form, both for economic and sentimental reasons. Consider gathering some textiles made by your own hand and others and combining them into a small quilt that breathes new life into the objects that are precious to you. Quilts have been an important source of not only warmth, but also self-expression in the community of Gee's Bend, Alabama, where women would take the worn-out clothing of their loved ones and stitch them together into kaleidoscopic patterns. The resulting quilts are breathtaking and personal works of art, now renowned around the world, and have become inspiration to many Black textile artists such as Faith Ringgold and Bisa Butler. Try to imagine a quilt that's unique to you, your background, and your heritage, and perhaps incorporate some sentimental textiles that you've inherited. If you have access to a basic loom, a small woven or otherwise interlaced tapestry or wall hanging is another option for a textile tribute. Although in many countries around the world, weaving was typically a male occupation while women spun the yarn to dress the looms, today weaving is often dismissed and demoted to women's work. Brilliant Bauhaus weavers of the 20th century, such as Annie Albers and Günter Stölzl, used weaving to create dynamic, abstract works of art in a completely new and modern way. Perhaps you could take inspiration from the wildly creative 20th century weaver Dorothy Liebes, who experimented with unusual materials such as tinsel and bamboo skewers. There are YouTube tutorials for building simple tapestry looms out of a wooden frame and a hammer and nails, so even if you've never woven before, I guarantee you can figure out something simple. There are endless ideas for textiles that you could experiment with for this project beyond what I've explained here and suggested, so please don't limit yourself. And don't be afraid to really push yourself and experiment with a medium that is totally new to you. There's no right or wrong way to make any textile. You can also create your own totally experimental technique using thread, hair, fabric, or anything that you have lying around. For more inspiration, check out the artist Ruth Asawa, who invented her own unique signature technique creating large sculptures out of interlaced wire, and also Mrinalini Mukherjee, who developed a signature technique using hand-dyed hemp rope to create knotted hanging sculptures. The important thing in this project is to use the time while you're working to meditate on the importance of the makers who came before us and to honor them. I'm so looking forward to see all of your work for this assignment, and thank you so much for participating. This is a real pleasure for me. Good luck!